Hello everyone, welcome back to Technologies Discussion channel. It has been a while since my last post. In fact, I take this opportunity to take a small break to celebrate my Christmas and also New Year with my family. During the break, I also so-called brainstorm to understand what kind of topics that you guys will be keen. So one of the topics that I actually identified will be digital communication. So I will revamp this topic, digital communication, in order to meet your needs. So this video, I will explain the advantages and also the disadvantages of digital communication. So mainly focus on the digital modulation. So basically this will be the objective of this video. This is my email. If you have any question regards on this discussion, please drop me an email. Or if not, I actually prefer you guys to ask me your question through the comment. Before I continue, I like to urge you guys to help me to press the like button. Just give me a few seconds. Press the like button now. For those who are new to this channel, and if you want to encourage me, please consider to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notification bell. Once again, thank you so much for your strong support. Let's kickstart the discussion by taking a look on the block diagram of analog communication and also digital communication. It's very clear that digital communication is slightly more complicated as compared to the analog communication. As you can see that more stages are actually required in order to establish digital communication. So in short, for analog communication, basically for the transmitter to send over the air, they will be sending analog signal, which is continuous in nature. As for digital communication, the transmitter actually send so-called digital signal, which is a discrete, which is 1 or 0 over the air for the receiver to receive. But over here, like I mentioned earlier on, I mainly want to concentrate on the advantages and disadvantages. Let's come to the advantages of digital communication first. So the first advantages, which will be the key of digital communication, because digital communication is known to be robust to noise and also interference. How? So basically, as I mentioned earlier on, digital signal are inherent, less vulnerable to noise and interference as compared to analog signal. Digital receiver can accurate detect and basically they can also regenerate the original signal. Let's take a look on this diagram in order to understand better. This is an analog signal with noise added on. You can see that the signal is continuous. This is a digital signal. It is actually discrete. As you can see that it is 0 or 1 for digital signal. As I mentioned earlier on, this analog signal introduce noise. As you can see from here, the noise will be added to the analog signal and it's always very difficult to remove away the noise signal. As for digital signal, even with noise added on, I can easily tell that this is a signal 0, this is a signal 1, this is a signal 0, and this is a signal 1. Even with more noise added, I believe that I'm still able to distinguish whether it is a signal 0 or 1. So therefore, from here, you can see that how digital signal can be less vulnerable as compared to analog signal. Next will be error detection and correction. So basically with digital communication, it allows sophisticated channel coding. So what does this mean? So if we have deployed this channel coding, we can detect, and for some case, you can even correct the error, which is caused by noise. This is not possible for analog system. Next will be the perfect signal generation. So at repeater, I guess you know the function of repeater. A weakened so-called digital signal can be cleaned, amplified, and perfectly regenerate. So what does this mean? As I mentioned earlier on, for analog signal, it is always very challenged to remove away the noise. So hence, I will not be able to repeat the original signal. As for digital signal, I know that this is 0 and this is 1, which means that 1 having a 5 volt. I can easily so-called clean this signal and amplify this signal And again, I will be perfectly generate this so-called digital data again. So this is what it means. So with this, you can imagine that we can actually prevent cumulative noise build-up over long distance. Imagine when we want to send over a long distance, we probably need a lot of repeater. And every repeater for digital, they can clean the signal, they can amplify the signal, and they can perfectly regenerate the signal, which is not possible by analog signal. So therefore, with this, you can imagine that we do not have cumulative noise build out over the long range. Okay, so basically, this is not possible by analog amplifier who actually both the signal and noise together. Okay, so basically, as I mentioned, this is probably the most important advantages of digital communication. The second advantages of digital communication will be enhanced security and encryption. Okay, so with digital data, it is possible to support strong encryption such as AES and RSA. Okay, so in fact, digital data can be easily encrypted with robust algorithm, okay, such as this popular encryption method before modulation. So therefore, it can create a transmitter signal that is inherent, very secure. Next, this is definitely superior as compared to the analog communication. Analog signal can only easily scramble with limited complexity. Okay, so therefore, digital encryption actually provide much significant higher security as compared to the analog method. So therefore, with this, you can imagine that digital communication is mainly trust for critical application. For example, we know that military communication need to be as secure as possible. So therefore, they actually select digital communication. Also, in some of the commercial applications, such as finance and private network, they also choose digital communication as compared to the analog communication because of the enhanced security and also a very robust encryption. The third advantage of digital communication will be the storage. Okay, in the very early days of analog communication, storage, okay, in an analog form is actually very complicated. Imagine this, okay, you actually need to copy a cassette tape or a VHS tape. So simply you are copying a continuous varying magnetic signal. Every copy actually introduces some form of noise, hiss, and also some form of distortion. And also there will be some generation of noise. So therefore, you can imagine that the 10 copy is actually much worse as compared to the original. Okay, because every copy actually introduce additional noise, addition hiss, addition distortion, and also the generation loss. So therefore, this is actually the limitation of analog communication. As for digital storage, okay, a digital file is just a sequence of number, either one or zero. So therefore, when you actually copy it, you simply just copy this number. A one is always copied as a one, and a zero is always copied as a zero. As long as you can tell them apart, there is actually no generation loss. The million copy, okay, is actually bit for bit, which is identical to the origin. Okay, so therefore, from here you can see that it is much easier to store in terms of digital as compared to analog storage. As the number of copy actually increase, you may actually so-called inherent more noise. This will be the third so-called advantages of digital communication. The fourth advantage of digital communication will be efficient multiplexing and integration. Okay, so with digital data, multiplexing is possible. For example, we can do TDMA, times division multiplexing, and also frequency division multiplexing, and also those complicated multiplexing, mainly for high efficient transmission. Digital data actually allow to carry multiple interleaved digital signal. For example, we can carry voice, data, and video all on a single channel. Next, compatibility with digital system. Okay, so again with digital data, this enables straightforward and seamless integration with modern digital hardware. For example, nowadays we work with computer, we enter our input with computer, they are all digital in nature. And also probably we do some form of processing using microprocessor. Again, the data need to be in digital format. Next will be on a digital network, for example, 5G, Wi-Fi, satellite, and optical communication, they are all classified as digital network. And last but not least, we definitely work with digital protocol. Number 6 advantage will be flexibility, scalability, and signal processing. As I mentioned earlier on, if we deal with DSP, the signal need to be in a digital form. We also sometimes do the digital processing using this software-defined radio. Next, okay, basically with digital communication, we can actually set the ideal modulation scheme based on the condition of the channel. For example, if the channel is noisy, we probably can set a lower level of modulation scheme. For example, now, if let's say the channel condition is ideal, we can actually adapt this advanced digital modulation like QAM. They basically will support higher data rate. Therefore, with adaptive modulation, they actually improve the total system performance. Last but not least, we can also support compression. Okay, for example, we can do some form of compression using MP3, JPEG, and MPEG to reduce the bandwidth significantly. Next will be on the lower cost and higher integration. Okay, basically for this VLSI advanced, okay, for digital component, for example, processor, memory, and FPGA, they are now in fact cheaper, more powerful, and more energy efficient as compared to the complex analog signal. Coming to my 8, okay, basically with digital communication, we can have a single chip solution. Once you have this single chip solution, this actually enable higher integration, and also they also reduce the system size, the weight, and also the power consumption because this is just a single chip solution. Last but not least, on the advantages of digital communication will be consistent quality and performance. Quality for digital system, they will be remain constant, okay, up to the limit of the system error correction capability. Okay, so unlike the graduation, degradation of analog TV and radio signal, they will fade away, or maybe the degradation will be abrupt. Okay, so this will be the advantages of digital communication. Okay, so before I continue, guys, this is very important for me. I hope you can help me by like this video. Guys, just give me a few seconds. Press the like button now. When more of you guys actually help to press the like button, this video will have a better chances to reach out to a larger audience. So guys, help me. Press the like button now. For those who are new to this channel, and if you consider to support me by subscribing to this channel and turn on your notification bell. Once again, thank you so much for strong support. Coming to the disadvantages of digital communication is firstly, higher system complexity. Like I highlight earlier on, you can see from this block diagram of analog communication as compared to the block diagram of digital communication, you can see that digital communication, they actually has a higher complexity as compared to the analog communication. Why? Simply because digital communication actually require analog to digital converter. Most of our source of so-called information, they are actually analog in nature. So therefore, we need to convert the analog signal to digital signal before they can send over to the receiver. And hence, we need this analog to digital conversion. Last but not least, on the receiver side, we also need to convert back the signal back to the analog form. Therefore, we also require to have this digital to analog converter. With the additional of this analog to digital converter and also digital to analog converter, this actually add up the system complexity. Moreover, if we need to do some form of processing, we need to have DSP. And again, if we need to do some complex form of scheme of modulation and also demodulation schemes, all these add up the system complexity. So from here, you can see that the design and implementation of digital communication, they are more complex as compared to the analog system. Next, increased bandwidth requirement, okay, for some case. Some simple digital modulation scheme, they may require more bandwidth than analog modulation for the same information rate. In an ideal world, we want to use as little bandwidth as possible to send out the message. But for this case here, you can see that for simple, lower level of digital modulation scheme, they may require more bandwidth in order to send the same amount of data as compared to the analog modulation. Next will be the higher power consumption. digital signal processing, let's say we adopt the higher order modulation scheme, they actually consume more power because they need to do some form of power amplification with larger linear range. This actually led to inefficient power amplification and also the higher cost for transmitter. The fourth disadvantage of digital communication will be quantization error. When we actually convert an analog signal to a digital one, we actually introduce some form of noise, which is quantization noise. This noise actually depends on the numbers of bits. We can reduce the noise by increasing the numbers of bits. However, this fundamental limitation of this quantization noise is actually not exist in the analog system. Next will be on the signal latency, which is the delay. Okay, so imagine this. When we need to do the process of sampling, quantization, coding, compression, and encryption, okay, they definitely will introduce some form of delay. Any process, they actually introduce some form of delay. This can be very critical for real-time application. Like for example, we want to do this live voice conversion or online gaming. Okay, so this little delay can also affect all this real-time application. Next will be the sensitivity to synchronization error. Digital system actually require precise synchronization. Okay, we need to know the start bit, the stop bit. Okay, so basically the bit, the symbol, and also the frame between the transmitter and receiver clock. So in general, you can imagine that we can actually use the GPS so-called time to synchronize both the transmitter and receiver. However, with this actually add up the overhead and also the complexity. And in some case, when we actually lost the synchronization, this can create a complete communication failure. Last but not least, on the threshold effect, at a below certain signal to noise ratio, okay, the system performance can degrade rapidly, okay, like sudden failure. When listed as an advantage for consistent quality, it is also a disadvantage. When the signal to noise ratio fall below this critical threshold, the error correction fail miserably and the link can drop entirely. So, but for analog system, they actually degrade gracefully. Okay, so basically with this discussion, I have discussed both the advantages and also the disadvantages of digital communication. But like I mentioned earlier on, the advantages simply outweigh all the disadvantage of digital communication. So therefore, in today's world, we only face with digital communication. With this, I'd like to end my discussion. Please help me to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Once again, thank you so much for strong support. I hope to see you guys soon. Bye for now. Thank you so much.